Without further ado, and with a great Peekskill welcome, Jeffrey.
Good evening. Some energy in the room. Good evening. All right, that's great. Yeah, so Peekskill has a special meaning for me. This is my first advocacy event in wrongful convictions here at Peekskill. I grew up in Peekskill. I was a student at Peekskill High School at the time that my life was disrupted. I was falsely accused and ultimately wrongfully convicted of a murder and rape, which I did not commit. My case happening right here in Peekskill. The victim was a fellow student from Peekskill High School, and as it later turned out, the actual perpetrator was from Peekskill. My wrongful conviction was caused by a coerced false confession, prosecutorial misconduct, fraud by the medical examiner, and an inept public defender. I was wrongfully convicted despite a pre-trial negative DNA test result. I lost all 7 of my appeals, including efforts at getting further DNA testing. I was excluded by DNA prior to being wrongfully convicted. So I was trying to get further testing as the technology advanced, but I lost all 7 of appeals. I was turned down for parole, largely in part because I maintained my innocence as opposed to expressing remorse and taking responsibility for a crime I didn't commit. Ultimately, I was exonerated through further DNA testing, which, as I mentioned, not only further excluded me, but also identified the actual perpetrator, whose DNA was only in the data bank because left free while I was doing time for his crime, killed another Peekskill resident. That would be school teacher Pat Morrison, who was also a mother of 2. Why are we marching? Wrongful convictions, 10,000 people each year are wrongfully convicted according to a Wayne State University study. 149 people were exonerated last year. I'm correct myself. 149 people were exonerated this past year. The year before that, 139 people were exonerated. Then in 2012, 2013, 91 people each year, each of those years respectively, were exonerated. Those are the people that made it out. Those are the ones who are exonerated. That's not the ones who are still left behind, who are wrongfully imprisoned. I believe the error rate of wrongfully incarcerated prisoners across the country is between 15 to 20%. When you wrongfully incarcerate somebody, it is not only devastating to them, but it's also devastating to their friends and to their family. On that note, I want to acknowledge one of the marchers who marched with us today, Maria Velasquez, sitting in the front right here with a show of her hands. Her son, JJ, John Adrian Velasquez, coming up on 19 years, wrongfully incarcerated with the injustice still in full swing, with several witnesses having recanted, admitted that they falsely implicated him, and with the actual perpetrator confessing to several people, yet he remains imprisoned. John Juca from the Brooklyn, then Westchester resident Lorenzo Johnson, wrongfully convicted in a Pennsylvania case, released, only to then be wrongfully incarcerated. I had to drive him back to prison to resume a life without parole sentence on a wrongful conviction case. 4 years later, still fighting to clear his name. Why didn't he run? An innocent man wanting to free his name. That doesn't happen if you go on the lam. What do we want? Because this isn't an object to do just attention, just for attention's sake. What do we want? Well, first and foremost, one of the key threads, common threads that happens in these wrongful conviction cases, one of the main causes is prosecutorial misconduct. There is a bill, which is Assembly 1131, Senate Bill 24. Everybody get that? Senate Bill 24. Senate Bill 24. Assembly Bill 1131. Assembly Bill 1131. That would create the nation's first Commission on Prosecutor Conduct. Do most of us know that the prosecutors have no oversight, that there is no one they answer to, that they get away with misconduct? It doesn't matter if they send the wrong person to prison. Nothing happens. They could withhold evidence of innocence. They can threaten witnesses. They can suborn perjury. They can threaten to remove your children if you don't give the testimony they want, and nothing happens. The prosecutor in my case got away with the misconduct that he committed. So we want this commission bill. We have strong bipartisan support, but we need everybody to reach out to your elected officials and tell them that you want that bill passed. What else do we want? We want interrogations to be videotaped. My coerced false confession, which the Peekskill police extracted from me over six and a half to 7 hours, featuring all kind of third-degree tactics, threats, false promises. I was 16 years old. It was not videotaped. It wasn't audio taped. There was no signed confession, just the cop's word. And you know what? Not surprisingly, when we came to court, they left the illegal acts that they committed in the course of that interrogation. They left that out of their testimony. They didn't admit that they threatened me. They didn't admit that they gave me false promises. And it wasn't videotaped. How could I prove it? So we need interrogations to be videotaped. You know, the average person thinks that an innocent person would never falsely confess, but coerced false confessions have been the cause of wrongful convictions in 25% of the DNA-proven wrongful convictions. We need assistance for people who are exonerated. I was released with nothing, not even an apology. Okay, you would think that I would be given short-term housing, cost of living expenses, mental health services, doctor and dental care, public transportation, classes on technology, job training, job placement. I got none of that. I was released, just like someone in zoology might release an animal back out into the wild, or back out into the jungle. Fend for yourself. I nearly ended up into a homeless shelter. I wasn't above things like putting cereal in a bowl and putting it on my backpack, or carrying cans of tuna fish around with a can opener and a spoon, because I had nothing. I couldn't afford to eat anything out. We need services for people who are exonerated, and we need to speed up the compensation process. You know, I find it a cruel irony, I'm getting ready to wrap up, but I find it a cruel irony that it often takes less than a year to railroad somebody. But yet when there's a lawsuit going on, and the government is the defendant, why is it this long, multi-year process? Why did it take me 5 years of struggling, you know, before I got any compensation? Why did it take 8 years for me to finally get to a trial? We need better identification procedures. Misidentification has been the leading cause of wrongful convictions. So as I close out, I appreciate the welcome we received in Peekskill. It's very touching. I'm happy we've had members of the local government come and spend their time. But you know, as much as I appreciate that, and I gotta be, look, I call it like I see it, and I did my 16 years for something I didn't do. I earned the right to speak the truth. Okay? I earned the right to speak the truth that I'm about to say. For it to legitimately be said, it's not enough of Peekskill to feel sorry about something. It's not enough to look back at what happened to me as a dark part of the history. You know what? We need the city to fully turn away from wrongful convictions. What we need, we still don't have, you know that we still don't have interrogations being videotaped. We still don't have best practices happening when it comes to identification. Right here in Peekskill, we still don't have it. So until those things happen, okay, until we have a procedure okay, which protects people from being wrongfully convicted by informant testimony, right? We need the police to have to get at least one extra piece of evidence, not just an informant to point the finger. Until we get those things, and as far as I'm concerned, from where I stand, Peekskill has not turned away from wrongful convictions, because when you turn away, you apologize, you turn your back from, you put things in place to make sure that it would never, ever happen again. And until those procedures happen, that's not what's taking place here. That's not what's happened in Peekskill. I want nothing more than for nobody else from Peekskill or anywhere else for that matter to be wrongfully convicted. And that's what this march is all about. And I want to give my own thanks, okay, to every single person that's marched with us so far and who's going to march, and everyone who's helped in one capacity or another. Because you know what? In a way, I don't have a choice but to be involved, because this happened to me personally. I know it happened to some of the people with us, but you know what? There's a whole lot more of us that it hasn't happened to, and yet you care. You're there to support us, and I appreciate that. And so, in wrapping, think about this as to whether you're going to make any phone calls to anybody, because most of us think we have to, be rich or part of become a corporation in order to contact your local officials to ask for the changes. Everybody can do it, that they represent you. But as to whether you're going to do it or not, or it was just a memorable moment for a day or two in your mind, or the day the guy wrongfully convicted from Peekskill came here and spoke, think about this. I was never arrested for so much as a violation. I was not a high school dropout. I was on my way to Peekskill High School right here on my way up on Fremont Avenue when I was initially intercepted by the police. It happened to me, and it can happen to you, your best friend, your neighbor, the person sitting next to you, any of your kids or grandkids. Please don't wait until you're personally affected like me. Join us now to help get this legislation passed to stop wrongful convictions. Thank you very much for welcoming me, Peekskill.